Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Hey, don't forget my pimento cheese. Of course.
It's okay, I'll take it from here.
Hey, the guy get a seat!
For the love of palmetto cheese.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host Scott Alexander, and I hope everybody's having a great start to the summer. And speaking of summer, you know what that usually signifies in college baseball? The World Series is right around the corner, and LSU has not been there since 2017. But this week they advanced to the Super Regionals. They got to open up against their old nemesis, the Tulane Green Wave, who shocked everybody by winning the American Athletic Conference tournament. Well, they ended up going to that game, and they won 7-2. Tulane fought hard in that one. Paul Skeens, who you see right there, threw a gem, but Tulane got 2 runs off of him. But he ended up being one of the all-conference, all-tournament players for the regional. The guy that won it all as far as the player of the tournament, the player of the regional, was Dylan Cruz. Who else? He went 8 for 13, throwing some walks in there. The guy's on-base percentage was outstanding as it was all season long. He continues to lead the Tigers, a 5-tool player. And along with Cruz and Skeens, obviously Tommy White has come up big, as well as several other Tigers. Then they went on to play Oregon State. And that game, Oregon State used to be a power. They came in as a tough 2 seed in this regional here. And that first game they showed them, that score 13-7. That was yesterday, but the first game, the one that mattered the most, was Sunday. Because if they lose that, you have to win 3 more games just to get into the Super Regional. Well, they won that one 7-6 in a tight one. And then they ended up winning yesterday, whereas Oregon State had to go the long route. And LSU went 3-0 this past weekend after a subpar SEC tournament. Obviously, they didn't do very well in that one. There is Coach Jay Johnson. He is looking forward to moving on to the Super Regional. Well, they'll play Kentucky, a team that they swept earlier this season, a team that's also very strong. Kentucky had some impressive sweeps of their own this year, but 2 of those 3 games were very close. This is going to be a hard-fought series. A lot of SEC teams are playing each other. Well, I say a lot. There's 4 of them, and you see it right there. 6 teams from the SEC made the Super Regionals, 6 out of 16 that are in there still. Alabama is going to play Wake Forest. You see LSU and Kentucky. We talked about that. Southern Miss right down the road. They get to go to Tennessee. That's going to be tough. Tennessee had some close games in their regional, and they ended up escaping there. In Florida, who right now is the top seed in the SEC. They're going to play South Carolina in that regional as well. It's going to be fun. Moving forward, though, how about this? The NBA Finals, man. It is exciting right now. Game 1, as expected, with 1 day's rest, that Miami Heat got blown out in Denver. That guy right there, Jokic, is putting up some incredible numbers. He's putting things up that's never really happened before. LeBron James kind of stuff where he's putting the assists, the rebounds, and the points and totals in one playoff run here that nobody else has really done except a couple other players. But, hey, the Game 2, that's where Miami came back tough. They had a couple more days rest. They got acclimated to the weather up in Denver. You know, the altitude up there takes it away a little bit, especially if you're already tired. Jimmy Butler did what Jimmy Butler does. He comes up big when it matters in the playoffs. That team started shooting the ball a little better, and now they go back home after winning game 2, and they took home court advantage back. It's going to be a hard-fought series. I can't wait for the rest of it. Hey, moving forward, how about the Saints? The OTAs are there. There's not a lot to discuss, but I'm going to say this real quick. We know last year and the year before, devastating injuries, because from 2017 to 2020, the Saints had the best regular season record over those 4 years. Well, they lost Drew Brees. We know that. But then they also had some bad injuries. We know in 2021 they had the most injuries for starting players in the history of the NFL. Last year didn't even seem that much better. Defensive secondary, very strong but very injured all year. Offensive line, same thing. Very strong if you can keep the top 5 healthy, but that was not to be done most of the season as well. If you patchwork those guys together and all the depth you have at defensive secondary, man, that should be very strong this season. Wide receiver was also very weak. You couldn't afford injuries, and yes, you got them. Other than Chris Olave, that was a weak performance there, but they should be strengthened a little bit more this year. And also the 2 positions that they definitely needed upgrades, they got. Quarterback, you ran with Andy Dalton all last season. He's a nice, solid backup, not a starter in the NFL anymore. You dealt with him. Now you got a guy, Derek Carr, who can put up some big numbers. He can stretch the defense by throwing long, great accuracy, and he's going to fit well in this program right here. John Gruden came in last week to work with him. Obviously, Gruden was his coach with the Las Vegas Raiders at one time. And also, tight end was a place you had to upgrade. You got local hero Foster Moreau, who played at LSU and Jesuit. He's a nice upgrade there. And you also got Juwan Johnson, and you have some other options there. But looks like if you can stay healthy, this team is favored right now to win the NFC South. And who knows, they might be able to make some waves in the playoffs as well in a weaker NFC than there is the AFC. Hey, we didn't mention Dylan Carmouche, but he is going to be one of our guests today. He came out last summer. He pitched against LSU and pitched a great performance. He won 2 games in the American Athletic Conference tournament. He came in relief in the championship game, pitched 3 innings, won that. He won his first game and starting in that. So he's been pitching very, very well. He's got a devastating curveball, and he's 6'7" and pretty dominating on the mound. He's going to talk about that LSU lineup as well. His coach, Jay Ulhman's going to join him in a segment there. We're also going to have former LSU hero Doug Thompson, the 1997 championship team he was on the mound when that game ended, and he's got that famous headline where he's in the sky with his fist pumped up. He's going to join us. He's also now broadcasting the games with Chris Blair. So he's going to talk about this team and a little bit about that great squad they had in '97, which had the most home runs in college baseball history. Also, Leah Vann, who's been covering the LSU baseball team for a few years now, she's going to join us as well to talk about LSU's chances in the Super Regional and trying to get back to Omaha. All that's coming up next right here on Primetime Sports.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. I told you this is an all-baseball show, and I can't wait. This is time of year for college baseball, and LSU is no stranger to this time of year going into the Super Regional, but they haven't been in the College World Series since 2017, and we're going to have one of the guys that's been in the World Series. He's played at a couple NCAA tournaments in the 90s when LSU had a dynasty. His name is Doug Thompson, and now he's calling the games for LSU. Before we do that, I want to tell you, this segment is brought to you by a good cause. It's the Louisiana Firefighters Foundation, who aim to create a safer community, offering safety training courses to current Louisiana firefighters and first responders, as well as free training and consulting services to our community business owners, teachers, and administrators. Visit LouisianaFirefighters.com to learn more and schedule your free training today to prepare your team for the unexpected. The Louisiana Firefighters Foundation, aiming to make Louisiana a safer place. And that is a cause that's near and dear to our next guest's heart. His name is Doug Thompson. And if you were around in the 90s, you know exactly who he is, because I had every single headline from the NCAA College World Series headlines when LSU won in 1991, 1993, 1996, 97, and 2000. Doug was in the picture for the 97 when LSU won that one, and here he is right here. Doug, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's always a great week after the Tigers get the win.
Man, I got to tell you, how much fun is it now that you've been in the booth for 8 years, and I listened to your entire game, about let's say, I say the entire game. I listened to about 7 of the 9 innings yesterday when LSU was playing Oregon State. I thought you guys were fantastic. You had the 3-man booth going there for a while. How much fun is it working with, obviously, Bill Franquez and Chris Blair, the voice of the Tigers?
Oh, man, they say that when you're having fun, you don't feel like you're ever going to work, and that's certainly the case. It's always easy to go up to the box and hang out with those guys. We have a lot of fun. I've, of course, known Bill for going on close to 30 years now, and Chris met basically the first week he got in town, and just great friends, and we have a lot of fun. And, of course, one of my favorite things to do is watch the Tigers play ball.
Well, I'm going to say this. You grew up in Biloxi, and before we get into this year's LSU teams, I want to talk a little bit about you. We're going to bring you back live in the summer, but when you grew up in Biloxi, did you have any thoughts about playing at LSU one day?
Yeah, it's actually a pretty cool story. When growing up in Biloxi, I was the only kid that wore purple and gold to the college sweatshirt day to school. Most people wore red and blue for Ole Miss, or maroon and white, or even black and gold for Southern Miss. And the reason I wanted to go to Biloxi really had nothing to do with sports at the time. My grandfather was a police officer in Biloxi, and I'd never met him. He was deceased before I was born. But I heard the stories from, dozens of families growing up that he would drive. He was a big LSU fan. He would drive around his squad car when LSU. And naturally, back then, it was more on the radio than on TV. And as LSU would be inching toward the goal line, he would be slowly pulling into the driveway of that said Ole Miss or Mississippi State fan. As soon as, of course, the Tigers would punch it across the goal line, he would flip lights and honk the horn, dun 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 on, and everyone told me that story. So just by default, really, I was always an LSU fan growing up, and it was a dream come true to actually go there and play ball.
Well, speaking of dreams come true, I mean, your season, 158 strikeouts that 97 season. I know you played a couple years at JUCO. You went to LSU, 97, 98, spectacular career. Your picture's up there. I don't know if you can see it, but that famous shot of you with the arms fist straight up after you won that game and you were on the cover of the paper the next day. What was that feeling like?
To throw the last pitch of the College World Series, it's a dream come true type moment. Every little boy at some point throws the ball against the garage door in the backyard, dreaming of that exact moment. But, the story of that year was our offense. They were incredible. They hit 188 home runs, a national record, which is still a national record, will probably always be the national record. The team was dominant from start to finish, 57-13. And that team was a team full of replacement players, really, because the 1996 team, arguably one of the better teams in the history of the program as well. They were laden with, veterans all the way throughout, up and down, starting with the Friday starters. So in 1997, to be a part of that effort where there was really all new faces, and to keep the tradition alive and really run, from start to finish as number ones was certainly a lifetime memory. And just throwing the last pitch, just kind of the cherry on top, something that I will always cherish, and a memory I'll always keep near and dear.
Yeah, I mean, winning 5 national titles in 10 years. Bertman had it rolling. He actually got there a year when I got to LSU in the mid to early mid to 80s, and I watched that thing grow. 85, they were really good. 86, they started going to the World Series, but 91, they got over the hump. And obviously, your team in 97 was the 4th of those 5. And then Maneri won in 2009. Let's fast forward to what Jay Johnson's doing right now. You get to see this team up close and personal. They've got some real weapons. They might even have the 1st and 2nd pick of the entire draft when we talk about Dylan Cruz and Paul Skeens. Are there any similarities to the team that you've watched this season to the team that you had in 97 and maybe even 98?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if you're going to make a run in Omaha or to Omaha, you got to have a few things: a strong defensive middle. You got to have some veteran leadership. You've got to have a 1-2 punch on the mound at least, if not more. And that lineup can't have a lot of holes in it. So, yeah, there's a lot of similarities and characteristics of this team that resemble a national championship, or at least an Omaha team. Yesterday, Hayden Travinski joined the double-digit home run club for this team. Now they have 8 players with double-digit home runs. That's the first time that's been done since 1998. And of course, you have Paul Skeens, which may not be one of the best not only one of the best pitchers in the history of our program, may have the best single season in the history of our program at the end of the day, with a few more wins and a few more strikeouts. But he's one of the more dominant pitchers college baseball's ever seen, in my opinion. So you've got him, Ty Floyd, and man, how about Thatcher Hurd lately, the last 6, 7, 8 outings for him. He was dominant in relief of Thatcher Hurd in that second game, striking out 12 batters in 5 innings.
That was remarkable. I know. I looked at the stats when I was watching the game live, and I think he had 3 2/3 innings, and he already had like 11 strikeouts. Maybe it was 4. It was something crazy. And I was like, wow, he's on a roll. And that's the guy that they thought they were getting from UCLA. He's pitched very well towards the end of the season. As far as the hitters right here, let's talk about Dylan Crews off the top. You've seen him now for 3 years, 5-tool player. Whoever gets him is going to be getting somebody special. Tell me what you like most about this player.
I like the way he goes about it. He's humble, he's quiet, first one there, last one to leave. He's a very respectful kid. He's the exact type kid you'd want to put all your money invested in and draft as the first pick in the draft. He's not going to get in trouble. He's going to work hard. He's obsessed with being the best, and he truly is one of the greatest players in the history of our program here at LSU, which is saying a lot. I mean, that there's a lot of people that have done some very special things here, and Dylan Crews, he's going to be right up there among the elite of the elite, and perhaps even one day there'll be a number 3 hanging somewhere out there at the box, because he certainly deserved it. Back-to-back SEC Players of the Year. Nobody's ever done that. And really the only thing left for that young man to check off the box is winning a national championship.
You said something special, man. There's been so many players, great ones. I mean, I go back to my era and when I was in college, and you had Ben McDonald. I mean, he was fantastic. I was close friends with Mike Papajohn, so I got to know some of those guys, Yurton and all those guys. But y'all's camaraderie as a program, I'm talking about through the eras, is very special. Can you explain or explain to us how special it is and what it means, for you guys, that even the guys in the 80s, they see these guys, like Blake Dean's there in 2009. They're all one big family, aren't they?
Yeah, it really is unique. And, there's a 30 on 30 about Coach Burtman that really gives you a lot of insight as to how and why so many different eras are still so close. You mentioned Mike Papajohn. He's a dear friend of mine, Louis Garcia, and on and on. And that really does. That's a very astute observation, because it's unusual. Like I have probably 250 former LSU players' phone numbers in my cell phone.
That's awesome.
And when 200 of them call me, they're going to start the call off with, ooh, big guy, just like Coach Burtman.
Yeah.
It's very special. It's very unique. I'm honored and blessed to be a part of it. And I'm just hopeful that these guys this year, can kind of cement their place in the history of the program.
Do you ever have fun with the other teams? I know, like the LSU championship teams, they were a little bit closer in 2003, 2007, and 2011 team might have been one of the best of all of them, and they fell to Alabama obviously in the final after a great regular season. And then 2019, we know that was dominant, but the 2003 and 17s in particular like to rib each other on which one was better. Do y'all ever go through that a little bit? Maybe the 91, 93 guys?
Of course, and it's all in good fun, because to win a national championship, you have to be great. And even the 09 guys with Mikey and Jared Mitchell and those guys, Buzzy, we like to have those fun discussions all the time. But it's really moot. It'll never matter who was the best. All that matters is that those 6 teams were the best at the end of the year. And man, when you look back and you think about each one of those teams and the players that were involved, it just gives you such a great respect for this program and the type of players that have come through there and continue to come through there. As you mentioned, we very likely, or a strong possibility, I would say, that we're going to have the first and second pick overall in the draft. And I really haven't looked much, but I don't know that that's ever been done. I think that Vanderbilt a few years back had a couple pitchers drafted in the top 5, but never back-to-back 1 and 2. And again, what a special place for the program to be. I feel like it's moving back to where it should be at the very top of the college baseball rankings.
Doug, we're going to bring you back this summer and talk more specifically about your team, because there's so many behind-the-scenes stories on that team, and I know a bunch of them, but you probably know 10 times more, of course, because you were part of it. But I can't let you go without talking about Skip Bertman. I mean, because a lot of people hear his name, the younger people, but what made him so special, I mean, as a coach? Because every one of the players that I know that played under Bertman, they don't all just quote him. They always quote him with the accent like you just did, with his special little dialect. What makes him such a special coach to win consistently like he did for so many years over the decades?
Well, they say imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and you're right. I mean, there's hundreds of guys that do a great Skip Bertman impersonation, and the things, I'll give you some things that made him unique. First of all, he's one of the greatest competitors I've ever been around. When the umpire says play ball, I'll go to battle with that guy any day. There's no love lost. It's all about winning. It's all about doing whatever it takes to win. It's all about finding the advantage in the minutia of the detail to win. He was great at that. The attention to detail, the ability to articulate some of those detail and focus points, the smaller pieces of the game to his players. To load our chambers with bullets, if you will, to be able to go to different type of plays and situations when we needed them. But what made him the best, was that he could motivate anyone. He made us all believe in who we were and our abilities. He reminded us constantly that we were born to be winners, and constantly filled us with motivational quotes about, ardently believing in something and sincerely, or ardently desiring something, sincerely believing it, enthusiastically acting upon it to go get it. I mean, he was just full of motivation. And as a leader, a lot of times a leader will run an organization with an iron fist. If it's not my way, it's the highway. And to a degree, it was like that. It was very systematic playing for Coach Bertman. But I think that maybe his most special characteristic outside of being able to motivate was being able to motivate each individual player. Some guys he knew what buttons to press at certain times, and some guys he knew the buttons he could never press. And he was truly the best at that, getting the absolute most out of every single person involved. Ronnie Rance, it's not your fault that you had a terrible game pitching. It's my fault for recruiting you. That's one of my favorite all-time stories. But hey, we're going to get more of those stories when you come back. I cannot wait. I've got some comparison things I want you to do with Bertman and Jay Johnson's later on, but I'm going to let you go. By the way, I've done many radio interviews while I'm driving, but this might be the first time I've seen an entire television interview done driving in the car. So be safe, my friend. All right. You got it, Scott. Thanks for having me. I look forward to coming to sit in studio soon.
I can't wait, Doug. That's Doug Thompson. By the way, check them out. Chris Blair, Bill Franquez, the Tiger radio broadcast, as they call the game starting this Saturday at 2 o'clock against Kentucky. Hey, we're going to talk a lot more baseball because Tulane had one of the most unbelievably special runs I've ever seen. A team that was finding its way during the season. It's a new team. They put a bunch of pieces together. Well, they caught wind, and they caught fire, I should say, when they got to the American Athletic Conference tournament. When they went down to St. Petersburg, they went 5-1, and they became the champs in that tournament, and they ended up having the right to play LSU, and they played LSU as tough as anybody did. And we're going to have the guy that pitched that game, Dylan Carmouche, who was here last summer, the big 6'7" guy from Denham Springs. Remember, he was with the Mississippi State Bulldogs when they won the national championship. Well, he's an ace on Tulane staff now. He's going to be joined by head coach Jay Ulhman, and we're going to talk about Tulane and that great run and what it was like to be in Tiger Stadium. That's all coming up next. And don't forget, we're going to go back to LSU. Leah Vann, who's been covering the Tigers for a few years now, she's going to join us and talk more about the LSU team coming up next. But it's all Green Wave next, right here on Primetime Sports.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At Mid-City Lanes, the home of rock and roll.
Max Durbus Realtors has been providing commercial and industrial real estate services to its clients for nearly 100 years. Since 1934, Max Durbus has been locally owned and operated throughout the greater New Orleans area, including the North Shore, Hammond, and even the Mississippi Gulf Coast and beyond. We focus on your commercial real estate needs so you don't have to. More information is available at 504-733-4555. The recent devastation from hurricanes have caused insurance companies to significantly raise their rates. However, most of them are offering large discounts if you install a fortified roof system, which uses larger nails and has a much stronger, resilient base underneath the shingles. The fortified roof professionals at Skyline Contractors can install these new roofing systems for you. More information is available at 504-355-6845 or at skylinecontractors.us.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports, and like I said earlier, this is going to be an all-baseball show. I do this very rarely, and I'm looking forward to it. Hey, we just talked to Doug Thompson, one of the great players on the 1997 National Championship team who now calls the games for the LSU Tigers, and one of the games he called with Chris Blair was against Tulane last Friday. Tulane had an incredible run after a season where they were getting it going, and they got to the AAC, the American Athletic Conference Tournament in St. Petersburg, and they rolled through it, winning 4 games out of 5. And we have the pitcher for 2 of those games. One of them, he started on Thursday and got a W, and then he came into the championship game on Sunday and pitched 3 innings, got another W there. His name is Carmouche, and of course their head coach Jay Ulhman, who had to be sky high after they won that, and they got to go to Baton Rouge. We're going to talk about all that, but here they are for the second time, well, third time for you, Jay. You came last summer.
Great to see you.
You came before the season. Good to see you again, and the second time for you.
Nice to see you again.
Good to see you, buddy. Well, man, I got to start with the bat with you. I mean, come on. You probably took some lumps all season long, and then the magic happened, in May over there in St. Petersburg. Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think our guys were tested early and often, and we faced a lot of adversity and failure, and fortunately it didn't kill us. And the thing that I think that they felt going into that thing was we played everybody and had a chance to win every weekend series except for the Houston series. So we didn't feel like there were, nobody had 3 elite starters and an elite closer. And so I think our guys felt a sense of purpose and an attitude that, hey, we can get down there one at a time. We win one, we get a day off. We win another, we get a day off. And, so they felt they had an opportunity, a real opportunity, and they took advantage of it. So just really proud of the way they hung with it, persevered, and it's a neat story. Out of the valley of death comes, the resurrection of us getting to the postseason, which was pretty cool.
Coach, I got to say something real quick, because I remember 2 weeks before about a week and a half before the season, I had Jay Johnson on. He came down and we talked. He was on here last summer as well. But then you were on the same show with UNO coach Blake Dean. And also, well, maybe Jay was on that one. Jay was on that one as well. But my point is their early season schedules are how it's usually done. They got some gimmies. They were going to win most of those. When I started reading your schedule, you're on the road, going to the UC teams that are always tough in California, USC as well. You just started the gauntlet, and I looked at you like this. I said, Coach, this is your first year. You're going to play 9 games on the road against power teams. Yeah. Did it help you towards the end of the season?
I think in hindsight it did when we got to that point of the season where our backs were truly against the wall. And you obviously want to win those. I didn't schedule them thinking that we were going to be where we were. I knew it would be challenging, and our margin for error was going to be thin based on our depth and those kind of things. But I think when you face those kinds of challenges, and you're used to the hotel room, and you're used to being on the road, and you have to be together, and you have a smaller group when you travel, I think those things, helped us down the road. And even just listen to the guys talk as we got into that tournament, how they believed, even though it wasn't successful for us in the win column, they felt like that put them in a mindset that they knew how to kind of deal with those kinds of things. So again, like I said at the beginning, unless they change the College World Series to Turchin, we got to go on the road. So that was kind of again, that was the mission, and I wanted to test us, and we certainly got more than we bargained for, but fortunately they were ready to go when it mattered the most.
I don't do high schools players very often, but when John Curtis wins a state championship in football, brought them on. Randy Livingston, Newman in basketball, brought him and a player on. And for the first time I did baseball, because Jesuit won it for the second time in 3 years, and we brought William Good and his coach, of course, as well. But the one thing those two players said about your schedule was like, hey, I love that. My coach isn't scared. He's not going to make any excuses. He plays a tough schedule. And that kind of surprised me. I was like, these are the kind of guys you want on your team.
Yeah, no question. And that, that was my mindset too, making it. I just remember being a player and wanting to play a competitive schedule and prove to people that we were worthy and you could win, And so, again, don't schedule thinking about the losses. I think about the value of the wins and what that brings to you. So, yeah, those are the kinds of young men that we're trying to bring in, and those kind of attitudes will help us as we continue to move forward.
You got a lot of Louisiana guys coming in, but you got one sitting here from Denham Springs who went off and got a ring with Mississippi State as a young player. Didn't pitch a lot of innings that year, but you got to be around a championship team. And then this year you became a big-time starter with Tulane. Obviously, things started meshing together in May, but what was it like this season? And did you see any kind of comparisons to how it was done in Mississippi State to what's going on now that Tulane's getting some success in baseball again?
Yeah, for us playing here, it was like, nothing, we never felt down about anything, and nothing ever, even though things didn't go our way at the beginning, I still feel like, we just kept going after it. And like at Mississippi State, we won a bunch of games and we played the easier schedule at the beginnings, just like all the big teams are now. And it wasn't like they weren't as hard, And
sure.
And that's the difference between like us this year is we just kept staying after it, and we just.
Did you get a chance to listen to the broadcast yet of when Ben McDonald was calling your game with Dave Neal, who, by the way, Dave Neal and I started at Turner Sports the very same day, and we remain good friends 30 years later. But I love the broadcast. Ben said, obviously he's worked with you a lot from the same area, and he couldn't stop talking about you as a person, you as a player who works hard, and he talks about that devastating curveball. When you're 6'6", 6'7", and you can throw some heat, and then you throw that buckler. What's it like when a guy was at one time considered the greatest player in LSU baseball history, and when he came out of college to go to the draft, he was projected as the #1 player to ever play college baseball, which is kind of crazy, whatever projections they use. But the fact is, Ben loves your game, and when you hear a legend like that talking about you, what do you think?
It really feels good knowing that somebody that I know personally and I've known for a long time, and I don't really see him as like some big figure because I've always known him, but
sure.
But yeah, it's great knowing that somebody with that great of skill and talent just believes in me.
Coach, what I loved when I saw right after y'all won, y'all had that banner up big right there. Was that the Wilson? Is that Wilson?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right on the building where y'all work out and your offices are. And it wasn't small. It was because Tulane basketball had a lot of success. We all know with the football team this year, the track, you got Tulane's just rolling right now. And then you said, hey, we got one. We got a tournament championship. That had to feel good.
Yeah, it did, and the support from the people within the building and those from outside the building has been really good. And you're always, when you have the record that we have, you're going to have your naysayers and those kind of things. But I think people that know kind of what we went through and how we continue to plug away. And I'm really proud of the guys. We re-engaged the community, we re-engaged the alumni. We had another team GPA of 3.0 or better, I think, for the 14th straight semester. We won a conference championship and got into the postseason. So a lot of really great things for us at the end. Had to go through, obviously, a lot to get to those really good things, which I think made it even more special and memorable for us. Like I said to our ops director, Curtis Akey, who's basically a Tulane historian. And
he's phenomenal.
He's the best. And what I said to him was, yeah, in a normal cycle, you want to win 40 games. It's about winning, and that's ultimately what it's about. We ultimately did that when it mattered, but it would have been nice to be a 40-win team and have another notch on our belt that way and do it the conventional way. But at least in this capacity, to be able to really separate ourselves from a negative to a positive, it's a standout kind of thing that you don't see very often. And so I think what I told our players post game when we were done at the regionals fundamentals was they can look at their ring and see that record and see the championship and know that no matter what obstacles that they're going to have in their lives, that they can overcome that and they can achieve through really crummy things. So it's just another tale and story of, keep moving, keep going, stay humble, keep working, and good things happen to you on the other side. So
it was a great lesson in perseverance. I'm going to say this: there's a couple hundred other teams that would like to have been in the NCAA tournament that weren't. And by the way, I love you smiling right now because I want to ask you something. As a kid growing up right outside Baton Rouge, and I know you know a lot of LSU people. I don't know if you pitched there before in that stadium, but certainly probably not as big a moment when you're pitching game one in the NCAA tournament against LSU with their tradition and their fans. And what is it like for a kid that grew up near there to be on that mound? And by the way, you pitched phenomenal. I'm just telling you right here, I watched every single pitch in the innings, the grit, determination, and the drive. I just love watching it. And, LSU's just a powerful team. But the fact is, what was it like for you?
I mean, it was electric. I mean, there was all their fans going out there cheering for them, and it really feels good knowing that you're worth playing against them.
I mean, listen, what kind of confidence did this end of the season give you going into next year? I'll start with you.
I mean, it's an extreme confidence. We had a whole new coaching staff, whole new team, pretty much, whole new everything, and if we could do that, then who knows what we could do next year. When you won the first game on Tuesday in the American Athletic Conference tournament down in Florida, what were y'all thinking right then off the bat? I mean, because you won that one, and then you win again on Thursday when you pitched, and then you go to Houston, and then if you win that one, you got the driver's seat to win. But when you go in the loser bracket, you have to win 2 instead of 1, correct? Well, when you won those first 2, what were your thoughts right there after that, like with your chances? I mean, did y'all still feel like we got a chance now here? Yeah, we always thought we had a chance, and we knew coming out playing Houston, we'd just gotten swept like 2 weeks before that against them, and we knew we really had to just step it up and just keep at what we were, and don't get down on ourselves and just keep going. And then once we won that first game, and then we knew it was pretty much over. We were just going to keep that same mindset for the rest of the week. So, Coach, tell me the difference of the text messages, the amount, from regular season to postseason.
Yeah, I mean, it was tremendous. I think the count was probably over 1,000 texts towards the end of the year.
7 were from me every time you played. All right.
And I responded to I think every single one.
You do it quickly too.
I try, and if somebody thinks enough to send a text, I think it's important to send that back. So, but yeah, during the season when it's struggling, I kind of try to relate it to when you get fired. You have this group of people that are friends or supporters, and they're feeling bad for you or maybe upset or whatever they are, and people just don't know what to say at those kind of things. There's only so much you can say. It's like when you strike out as a hitter and you're going back to the dugout, the last thing you want to hear is, hey, good job, or keep going. It's like, just pat me on the back or the butt and just get them next time, you know. So I think, people don't really know what to say in those spots, but I don't take that personally because I totally get it. And but I think the outpouring of text messages and phone calls and DMs, I think really signifies to me that there are a lot of people out there that wanted to see us do well, which I am very grateful for. I watched the bats come alive, and I want you to talk about some of these players you have out there. Like, is it Teo? Teo. Yep. Listen, I know there were some struggles early on. This guy just caught fire, but he's just one of a few, Marquette. Yeah. I mean, talk about some of those guys that really caught fire at the end. Yeah, I'll just start with Teo. I think he put a lot of pressure on himself at the beginning of the year, and I think if he took out the first month of the season for him, I think he's probably a 350 and higher batting average kind of guy. He's electric. He's an electric mover. He can run. He can throw. He's got all the tools, and he's competitive. And so, the more pitches that he saw, the better he continued to get. I think one of the really things that kind of the light came on for me where I thought, like, okay, he's really taken the next step is I remember Skeens threw him a breaking ball in the dirt, a pitch that he would have chased frequently in the beginning of the year, in addition to a fastball over his hands. He stopped doing that, which made the pitchers come back in the zone more, which starts creating more success because they can't just get you out by just throwing you bad pitches. Mm-hmm. They actually have to throw it over the white thing. But he took that pitch from Paul in the dirt, and I think Paul's breaking ball is probably more like a lot of people's fastballs. So for him, and he took it well, was in a good position to hit. So I was like, okay, so just kind of more of the philosophy of the more you can see, the better you're going to get. And, he lost a lot of the season last year with a thumb injury, and so he's still making up at bat. So the future's really bright for him. Brady Margette, for me, he's another guy like Tio that could play in the big leagues. He's got barrel to ball skill. The bat is in the play in an awful long time. He's 6'6". He moves better than you would think he does. He's actually fast, especially once he gets going. He's got developing power in the bat. So he's a special talent, left-handed bat over at first, and guys like Gavin Scholes, who are just as we call him, little teapots.
Came up big late in the season,
competitive,
right? Yes.
And, so we've got and I'll probably forget somebody.
Yeah.
But we just a lot of really good pieces, and we're out there trying to get some more of those.
You mentioned Skeens, and I have Leah Vann, LSU's beat writer for baseball, coming up next, and we're going to talk LSU. But I want to get your perspective on this team. Facing Skeens, who could be the first or second pick of the draft, probably will be. Also, you're a great pitcher in your own right, but also that lineup and what it's like when they're now leading off Cruz and you come with White, and all of a sudden these 3, 4, 5 guys are hitting the cover off the ball. Just explain what it is to a normal person, casual fan that watches baseball, what it was like facing that lineup, each and every one of them.
You treat them like any other person, and you just can't miss in the wrong spots. You just don't miss over the plate. That's pretty much it, really.
What would be your telling another pitcher how to pitch to, say, Dylan Cruz?
You just gotta pitch. Use your strengths over pitching to their weaknesses. Know what you could throw, and just don't miss over the plate.
Don't miss the plate. That's it. But let's say some people from Kentucky are watching. What would be the best way to beat LSU this weekend? Kentucky's got a great team. That could happen pretty easily. They played 3 games, and then 2 of them were very close. So if you were out there, and since you faced them, nobody really gets to face a team like that, us, fans. What would be your advice to Kentucky?
No matter what happens early, just stick with your game plan. Just keep making pitches and try to make as many outs. And
Coach, you mentioned Skeens, and I had Jake Johnson on earlier, and all I heard last summer was that you heard, obviously
Floyd,
but
Edwards,
also the pitcher from Vanderbilt, Little.
Yep.
That's all I heard, but I didn't really hear a lot about Skeens because he was talking about his power, and he made me think that he might be a DH in some pitching. But when he came on in February, he goes, "This guy's going to be special," and he said just the things we're saying here. He might be so good, he might be right behind Cruz as the second pick of the draft. Now, first I'm thinking, wow, I haven't heard a ton about him. I didn't follow fall ball much, but when you watch him on the mound and his whole core and everything else about his pitches, and I know his slider's gotten even more devastating, but as a coach, what do you see in him that's going to make him successful in the next level? He
has the frame to carry a lot of innings. I think that's a big thing. In the big leagues, you got to have a frame to carry innings, especially as a starter, And so he can use both sides of the plate with a fastball, and he can get swing and miss with the slider. So he's a special talent. I've seen a lot of guys over the years that look like him and pitch like him. I shouldn't say a lot. A few guys, not a lot. Strasburg and Jeff Neiman and a couple other guys like that.
Pryor? He's got a trunk like Pryor, right?
Yep. So he's gifted that way. And the other thing that I really think speaks volumes about the young man is that he started at Air Force. And that's the military academies are not for the faint of heart. So he has a toughness to him and a physicality to him that's going to lend him to having success in the big leagues for sure.
Well, we give gifts here at Primetime Sports, and one of these restaurants is right by where you guys are, and that is Shays de la Shays right there on Maple between Carrollton and Broadway.
Yep.
Hey, we're going to up it a little bit this time. Hey, you're not in school right now. We're going to up you. Take your girl there.
So
Shays de la Shays. Also, de la Shays on St. Charles Avenue. You can use that there, too.
Thank you, sir.
And that is a great place.
Appreciate
and the Tulane graduate, Al Andrews, started this company called Task.
Yep.
I was going to let you choose between green and gunmetal, but you know what? I'll give you both a green. How about that?
That sounds good.
There you go.
Thank
Task
you.
Performance at Drew Brees. If Drew and Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton wear them every day to training camp, when I first got back in New Orleans 10 years ago, I said, I got to start wearing these, and that's all I wear now.
Yep.
There you go.
These are my favorite shirts.
Thank you.
By the way, did you ever wear the other one you got back when you came last summer?
Yeah, it's like one of the only shirts I wear.
All right, I was going to just wear this one myself, but the gun-medal, there you go.
That's awesome.
Hey, Al Andrews, I didn't plan that. Your boy just said that, so I was like, okay, those are two good colors. By the way, great year. Can't wait to see y'all next year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy, man. Like, everybody was so happy just for you, the person, because it's like, golly, he's such a great guy. I want to see some success, and you got a little taste of it, so that's awesome.
Yep.
Hey, by the way, you were at Oregon for a long time, so you know big-time baseball. You've seen it up close, and Tulane will be back where they were back in the 2000s. They were in the 2001 and 2005 World Series, and that's what Jay Ulhman's task is going to be, to try to get them back on that level, and I'm sure he will. Hey, we just finished talking about Tulane. We talked a little bit about LSU. We're going to go back to LSU because, hey, they haven't been to Omaha in 6 years, in a place they used to go regularly. We're going to talk to beat writer Leah Vann, who's been covering the team for a few years now, and she's going to be right here next to talk about the Kentucky LSU Super Regional Series this weekend, right here on Primetime Sports. Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. Hey, I really enjoyed catching up with Coach Ulhman and, of course, Dylan Carmouche again and Doug Thompson earlier. But we're going back to LSU baseball right now because they're hot. They just won 3 games in the regional this weekend after losing 2 in the SEC tournament. And the girl that covers them all the time, well, she's with the Times-Picayune, the Advocate, NOLA.com. Her name's Leah Vann. She works with Wilson Alexander, who came last summer to talk about the LSU football team, but they do both sports together, and here she is for the first time, Texas Longhorn, now in Baton Rouge. How you doing, Leah? Nice to meet you.
I'm doing well. Way to call me out right off the bat.
Well, I love that you got the hair, same color as your team. You're a big Longhorn fan, right? You're from Texas?
I am.
So let me say this. When you've watched Texas football, I've seen a couple of things on Twitter or whatever. You get sad when they lose, and you're very happy when they win, so you're a true fan. Sometimes people get in the media, I'm not naming names, Larry Holder, and then they act like they don't care about their teams anymore. Like they're unbiased. Please tell me, Scott Van Pelt says this all the time, we're all from somewhere, and I love that you still have passion for your team. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I think I went to a women in sports media conference a couple of years ago, and Linda Cohn was speaking, and she said, we all got into this because we are fans.
Right.
And I think they teach you in J school, like, don't be a fan, like, make sure you're unbiased. And I get that sentiment, but also let's not pretend that I'm not a Texas fan.
Right.
I feel like I'd be lying to people. And as a journalist, I'm supposed to be truthful, right?
Right.
I'm supposed to be. So I think when you're transparent, people trust you more.
100%.
I also think, it doesn't necessarily mean that I can't be critical of my own team.
Sure.
So, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Texas football is going to win the national championship every year, right? Like, I'll joke about it.
We can say it here in New Orleans because they want Arch Manning to win. They're all becoming fans.
That's true. That's true. But, I could still be analytical, maybe even more so about my own team because I know more about it. Look at the columnists that you read anywhere. They all went to that school. I mean, Kirk Bowles went to Texas. Scott Ravelli has been covering LSU for how long? So, if you're a fan, it almost makes you more informed about that team. And then people are actually surprised to hear that I never went to LSU. I didn't grow up an LSU fan.
Right.
So there's positives and negatives to it, but I'm not going to hide my fandom. I just think it doesn't mean that you can't do a good job covering another team.
I've covered Texas many times with Tim Brando, doing games in basketball and football, many times in football. But I love the tradition there. You've been there. Now you've been here for 2 years. You've covered the football and basketball teams. You got to see a little bit of Coach O, that little weird transition they had. And you saw Brian Kelly this season. Any comparisons between the fan bases of these two teams?
Of LSU.
LSU, and I'm talking about football in general right now. LSU and Texas.
LSU and Texas. I think that, a lot of us Texas fans have kind of learned to measure our expectations after several coaching hires that have only lasted 3 to 4 years. So, the expectations are always high, and we want to get back to, relevance. But with LSU, it's different. The expectation every year is we're going to win a national championship, and if we don't, it's a failure.
That's crazy.
I also think that LSU fans are they know a lot more about the game itself, I think. They want to know who the starting left tackle is. They want to know who's starting at center. They want to know who's at corner and why, like, Harold Perkins is playing linebacker, like, as like an edge rusher in one set. Or if he's playing middle linebacker, they want to know the difference and why he's moved on a certain play, right? Or they know, like, the next recruit coming up, like, 3 years from now.
That is a great point.
And so, like, I think they're a lot more. Involved when it comes to just the intricacies of the game.
Sure.
And also the recruiting side, and I think they also are a lot more loud. Like, Texas fans are loud. We have a big, network and everything, but I think at the end of the day, we like kind of put it to bed.
Right.
But LSU fans,
they live with it all weekend.
They will live and die.
No doubt.
With LSU sports. So.
And I agree with that completely. And, I'm not always in agreement with that, but to each his own. Hey, about LSU baseball right now, I'm going to talk Texas real quick. When I was growing up, Texas baseball was the thing. Calvin Schiraldi, Roderick Clemens. I mean, Texas baseball was it. They were going to the World Series all the time, and they still get there sometimes now. Now that you're here, look at the picture of you with the Texas. All the time.
They were there last year. They were there before.
Well, sometimes, not every year. It seemed like they were in every year in the 80s. But hey, real quick, with the LSU baseball, that's the thing with expectations. It's almost like they almost built this monster that you can't compete with. And Paul Mainieri, as much as he would try to say, hey, listen, I know the expectations here. If I don't get to Omaha, it's a failure, which I think is ridiculous. Only 8 teams out of a few hundred can get to Omaha. Following this baseball team, and, they've had some down years for their standards lately. Compared to what they have until this year, coming back. It used to be Omaha or bust, which I thought was ridiculous. But now that you've seen a little bit of their kind of outlandish expectations, what's your take on this fan base in baseball?
Yeah, I mean, I understand this year it's kind of justified based off the transfer portal acquisitions. I mean, Paul Skeens was the top pitcher coming out of the portal, and then Thatcher Hurd was the second biggest pitcher coming out of the portal. People forget that because he struggled a little bit in the midseason, but he was the second most highly touted pitcher coming out of the transfer portal.
No question.
And then you've got Tommy White, who also came from NC State. So you kind of, replace that Jacob Berry guy in the lineup. So, and then you've got the best college baseball player in the nation, which is Dylan Cruz. And so, I mean, when you have that amount of talent, it is reasonable to expect that you're going to go win a national championship. But when it comes to college baseball, it's not always about the most talented team.
No
it's about the team that plays the best that day, but it also is about, like, health, them, outlasting all kinds of adversity throughout the season and being able to handle those expectations, which I think LSU has done very well. But, I think going into the season, you also had a lot more pitchers. You had Jaden Newt that they got out of the draft.
Absolutely.
He's been out since before the season started. You had Grant Taylor, who came out of the Cape Cod League, upping his draft stock, and he could have been a starter for this team. And then you start playing. You have Chase Shores, the #1 pitcher in Texas. He goes down. Then you've got Garrett Edwards. He goes down. So you're losing all of the guys you're not all of the guys, but like a lot of the
significant amount, right.
The staff, the part of the staff that really had the firepower. And then Christian Little, yes, he was a highly touted pitching recruit, but he also had some things that he needed to work on that he wasn't getting better at Vanderbilt. And so he was kind of more of like a work in progress kind of guy coming into this. But I think a lot of people saw him as like, oh, he's coming from another SEC program. He's going to be all that. But no, he's also a work in progress.
I know in the old days when I was covering teams regularly, like say in the 90s and early 2000s, the beat writers always went to every game. I mean, then for a while, some papers cut back and they weren't going to all the road games. What is it like right now? Do you go to every road trip?
Yes.
So you go to every game? So
every
this
game.
Is perfect. So LSU won almost every series. They won every series except South Carolina. They didn't get that third game until later in the season. And when they had the series against Auburn and then the other one, was it Alabama or whoever? Who was the second one they didn't win the series with late in the season?
Mississippi State.
Mississippi State, that's it. Did you see like any kind of change in the demeanor of the players as far as going into the postseason, because they were so used to winning, all of a sudden they blew that big lead against Mississippi State on Mother's Day? And I know a lot of the fan base was trying to tell me this team just doesn't have it. I said, that's one game. This is one series. This is a long run out thing. And that's the thing about sometimes the fans' expectations, but in the dugout themselves, and when you go to the post-game press conference, what did you see from the players that going into the postseason? Did you see anything about being down at all?
No, I mean, I think the players have all been trained to flush things out and to, continue to continue to work and trust their process, trust their routines and keep going. Certainly they were disappointed, exiting the SEC tournament early. They were disappointed with the Auburn loss and Mississippi State, but at the same time, there's still so much baseball left. And I think this team had been through the gauntlet. I mean, you look at the month of March, you had Arkansas, Tennessee, Texas A&M. These are all teams that made the postseason. And, Auburn was kind of a late rise, but, Mississippi State was obviously bottom of the SEC. And then Georgia, same thing. They ended up beating Georgia. But I think, it's also a product of statistics. I mean, you're just not going to go 56-0. And things are going to happen. I think a lot of them were also stressed around finals time, which I hate to make an excuse, but it's true. It's harder in the month of May to be successful as a college baseball player. There's a lot going on, and I think it's also there's this point of can we just get to postseason at this point?
Exactly.
So. But I never really saw the players change or shift in mood. I think Jay got a little bit more serious and a little bit more close to the belt. There have been a couple of tough questions I've asked him that he's dodged, but that's kind of what happens when you're going through that tough time and you have all this noise that's just kind of beating down.
I've noticed the same thing. He's withdrawn a good bit. I mean, he used to be returning those texts immediately. Then sometimes it might take a couple days. You said something earlier that struck me because you said, listen, people don't realize baseball could just be one game and baseball can go either way. It almost happened on Sunday. I mean, it was a 7-6 game. That game could have easily gone to Oregon State, where then you'd have to win 3 games instead of the 1 to win it. That measure of win-loss is so finite sometimes, but that one in particular, did you have any thought process that they might not get that one during the game? Because it looked for a while a little bit dodgy.
Yeah, I mean, what I saw was I think it was the first 2 innings they didn't cash in runners with bases loaded.
Twice, right.
And I know in the month of May they went 5 for 24 with the bases loaded, which is weird when you have the nation's RBI leader in Tommy White coming to the plate, which they had shifted their lineup to where he wasn't batting cleanup anymore. But I did think if they're not able to, and I was it's the first 2 innings, so it is a good sign that they are loading the bases. It is a good sign that they're hitting them up, but also I'm not sure what they're going to come back after this rain delay and do, because I also was there at the rain delay in South Carolina.
Right.
And so, and then, we've got the pitching situation. I wasn't sure if they were going to go to Thatcher Hurd because I thought they wanted to save him as a starter for the next day. So, and then you don't know, Thatcher Hurd's been pitching exceptionally well lately, but there was also the midseason Thatcher Hurd that we saw who got hit up a bunch. So I also wasn't sure from that standpoint what was going to happen.
You went to Kentucky. I mean, that was home or road?
It was home.
It was home. So if you had in a minute and a half, you had a quick breakdown of what LSU needs to do to beat Kentucky this week, and what would it be?
Play solid defense. Kentucky's a small ball team. They're going to bunt a lot. And I think that's what threw LSU off last time. And so, although they did run rule in the first game, and then the second game they lost, and the third game they ended up taking by a smidgen. But I think if LSU plays its own game offensively and then it defensively stays clean, then it should be a good win.
Have you been to Omaha?
Yeah, I have as a fan.
As a fan. So would this be the first time if they make it this week and you go?
It would be the first time that I go as a reporter. I've been twice as a Texas fan.
Well, I wish I had some more time. Next time you go, we're going to do 20 minutes. Is that cool?
All good.
Hey, we do gifts here. This is the restaurant in New Orleans called Chez de la Chez. It's uptown on Maple Street. In fact, I'm going to give you a little more to add on to that so you can bring a friend. And also Task Performance. Fun workout chip right there. Task, I appreciate you so much, Ann.
Thank you so much.
I wish we had more time. Leah Vann right there. Hey, check her out real quick. NOLA.com, of course, Times-Picayune, and The Advocate. And you can check her out on Twitter as well. We had her Twitter site up there. Hey, I wish I had some more time. Hey, next week we're going to bring in some of the Saints players. We're also going to have some Pelican talk next week as well. And hopefully we'll be talking about LSU moving on to hopefully go to Omaha again. And right here on Primetime Sports, we'll see you next week. I want to thank Will, my producer, and of course, Jim Dotson and Ron Yeager, and the guys in the back, Logan and Alex and the rest of them. See you next week right here, Primetime Sports.